380 million years ago, the Earth was a very different place. Plant life as we know it had just begun to evolve. The distance the Earth was from the sun has changed, and the world was quiet. There were only small insects living on the land. The moon was closer to the Earth, and the days were shorter. It was the Devonian period, the age of the fish, when the world was filled with trees, ferns, and moss. The only sounds were of the wind and the water. It was the beginning of our time.
Hi, welcome to Gilboa. I'm Kristen Wyckoff. I'm a resident here in Gilboa. I'm also a fossil enthusiast. Gilboa is a small town in upstate New York in the northern Catskill Mountains. While some people have never heard of Gilboa, New York, geologists from all over the world are familiar with our tiny little town and the fossils that were once found here. These magnificent fossils, cast in stone, have given scientists a window into the past, into that ancient landscape that once existed 380 million years ago.
Nearly 380 million years ago, long before dinosaurs walked the Earth, Gilboa, New York was located south of the equator near Scotland, in a valley between the Arcadia Mountains and the Devonian Sea. Gilboa was home to a large forest, rich in foliage and plant life. Dr. Bob Titus, a geology professor at Hartwick College, Oneonta, New York, explains.
All of this region was entirely different from anything that you're familiar with today. New York State didn't exist, but this vicinity was south of the equator. This was a gorgeous tropical sea, the Catskill Sea. If we were here at that time, you're at the bottom of an ocean, it's dark, you look up, you can see the sunlight shining through the waves that are passing above us. You swim to the surface, you gaze east, and you see the snow-capped peaks of mountains rising above the ocean in front of you. That's upstate New York. During the Devonian time period, the time period that the Gilboa forest is growing.
Giant fern trees called Eospermatopterus rose 25 to 30 feet in the air and dominated the landscape, along with several other species of plant life. The Devonian Sea was filled with a species of fish known as armored fish, and a new species, lungfish, was starting to emerge. There were no animals on the Earth except for what lived in the sea.
These fish would face droughts with a little less fear. And what would happen is in the closing stages, as the river would be drying up, and the fish was in a desperate situation, it would literally drag itself out of the water in hopes of finding another stretch of the river where there was water. And there the fish will survive, jump back into the water happy as can be and swim off, and will have made it through another drought season. Fish that did that appear to be the ones that evolved into amphibians. And the amphibians are the animals that evolved into reptiles. And reptiles are the animals that evolved into mammals. And you and I are mammals.
The Earth was in a very volatile state, however, and great storms started to take place, causing the forest to be developed and then suddenly destroyed.
This is the fossilized root system of the Eospermatopterus, the Gilboa fern tree. And this, you could see, it was like a ribbon roots. They were very straight roots, and they attached at the bottom of the base of these Gilboa trees and supported them in the ground. They were not very supportive, and they probably toppled over fairly easily during tropical storms.
Linda Hernick, paleontology collections manager at the New York State Museum, describes what happened.
In the Devonian, there were storms just like there are now, catastrophic storms, and because these trees grew close to the shore, and that it drove all the sand in around their bases and killed them. And the rest of the trees, rotted and fell off and probably carried out to sea. But more sand got washed into the hole there inside, and so we wound up with these casts of the stumps, because that's what they really are. They're casts of the stumps themselves.
Although today Gilboa is known throughout the scientific world, it wasn't until 1853 that a discovery was first made. An ordained minister with an interest in geology named Samuel Lockwood discovered a fossil tree stump.
He was an amateur naturalist, very well read, and he was aware that Devonian plants should be found up there. Lockwood was taking a walk one day in Schoharie Creek, probably on a Sunday afternoon, and he found a part of a stump there in the creek, and he knew exactly what it was when he found it.
A second discovery was made along the banks of the old town of Gilboa after a massive flood had destroyed some of the town in 1869. A local man named Daniel Mackey came across a fossil while digging for rock to rebuild. Gilboa would have to wait for its fossil fame until the construction of the Gilboa Dam in 1920.
These fossils are a few of the 20-plus fossils that came out of the riverbank quarry during the construction of the Gilboa Dam back in the early 1900s.
After the discovery of the Gilboa fossils, a paleontologist from the New York State Museum named Winifred Goldring undertook the project of scientifically describing and illustrating the Gilboa fossil material.
But then when the fossil material at Gilboa was being found, she undertook that project.
It's hard to imagine how that ancient landscape must have looked, but there's evidence all around us.
I'm sitting in front of a fossilized stone wall, and these fossils were taken out of a quarry in upstate New York. Just like these fossilized seashells that you see here, I also have fossilized fragments and pieces of the Gilboa fern trees. And all these pieces together were like a giant jigsaw puzzle that were used by the scientists to come up with a theory on the Devonian period. This is called a lycopod, and this was an actual tree, and these are branches of the lycopod. And all these little pock marks are where there was a leaf, and when the leaf fell off, it made this pock mark.
The short ferns and club moss still present in today's forest give us a small window into what Gilboa looked like during the Devonian period. Thanks to the work of early fossil enthusiasts like Samuel Lockwood and Daniel Mackey, and enthusiastic paleontologists like Winifred Goldring, we can now understand how important Gilboa, New York is, and the important role it plays in geological history.
Scientists all over the planet Earth know about Gilboa, have heard of this little village of Gilboa. It's a remarkable thing. This fossil forest is a world-class fossil locality. These were among the first forests. These were among the first plants and animals that grew in forests. And so paleontologists, scientists come to Gilboa to sample the rocks and learn. These fossils are a lot more important than dinosaurs. They tell us so much about the world as it is today than, say, dinosaur might. Look out here in the Catskill Mountains, this beautiful forest ecology. It began in places like Gilboa, and that's really important.